My name is Nozinhle Kasaval. I'm a learning and development professional. I work for a corporate training solutions provider based in Johannesburg, and we provide learning and development and training solutions to other businesses. I'm from KwaZulu-Natal, from a lovely, small, vibey township called Ngwelezane, and it is close to Empangeni and Richards Bay. It is north of Durban, for those that are familiar with Durban. So I am Zulu, and I currently live in the hustle and bustle of Johannesburg in South Africa. And something interesting about me and my background is that I'm quite passionate about just my own personal development and my own sort of transformation as an individual. And that's why I find myself in the role and the profession that I'm in, which is learning and development. I'm an advocate for mental health, and I do mentorship as well as counseling for the South African Depression and Anxiety Group. So, those are some of my passions and some of the things that I do on the side. And in line with advocating for mental health, I look after myself by going to the gym quite regularly, as well as running. I absolutely love running. It is for me a release in terms of just the daily stresses of life. But I also find that I get quite creative during my running. And it is one of those things that I do just to really feel good about myself and boost my confidence as well. After high school, I studied BCom industrial psychology, which I have to say, unfortunately, didn't complete. But I think that was sort of the teaser or sort of the intrigue that I find myself around people, around developing people, around working with people. But I later completed a BTech in marketing from the University of South Africa. And then after that, I found myself really getting interested into the learning and development, and I've since completed a few, I would say, instrumental courses like the counseling course I did in the George Brown College in Toronto, as well as some business and leadership short courses that I did in the Rotman School of Management in Toronto. And then I recently graduated for my Master of Business Administration in South Africa, here in Johannesburg, from the Wits Business School. I've truly immersed myself in developing my own skill set, which is why I'm able to truly live the passion of helping and supporting other organizations in terms of developing their own people. When I started off after high school and going for that BCom industrial psychology degree, due to my circumstances, I couldn't complete it. However, that didn't deter me from trying to find something else that I was interested in. And that's when I took on the marketing. And I started that marketing journey as a diploma. It was a national diploma, then upskilled it or upgraded it rather to become a BTech degree in marketing. What I understand from that journey was just the perseverance in making sure that I was ensuring that I am marketable, or rather, I'm setting myself up for success, because I realized that the national diploma wasn't enough. And then I realized that there was an opportunity to substantiate that degree, that qualification. Fast forward into some of the courses that I've done in the college and the business school in Toronto. What I think for me has been prominent in my studying journey is understanding what skills I need for the work that I do. So, for example, when I did the business leadership and communication course in the Rotman School of Management, that was based on where I was in Canada in terms of the role. I realized that there was a different way that Canadians sort of navigated their working career. I wanted to obviously position myself as a leader. I obviously wanted to get promoted and noticed, and that's why I pursued that. With the counseling course that I did at George Brown College, that was also based around some of the things that could help me become a better professional, because the counseling program really allowed me to tap into other ways of conversing and understanding people, because the whole principle around counseling and mentoring people is giving them tools and giving them sort of strategies to develop themselves and understand them a little bit better. But it is a support sort of skill that you acquire. Fast forward to back in South Africa doing the MBA. That was purely based around the diversity in some of the roles that I found myself, from my background, having done marketing, having done a lot of different things, and having found myself in different industries as well. The MBA really is sort of quite diverse in that you learn about managing people, you learn about marketing, you learn about finances, you learn about operations, how businesses and business models look like. So that really made sense as a next step. What I've learned throughout my studying journey, again, first and foremost, is understanding the skills that you need for whatever role or circumstance or capacity you find yourself in. So I'd always go back and say, what am I doing now? And what skills do I see that I lack or need in order to help me move up or become better? There's many ways of supporting ourselves into even becoming experts in what we do. And you can do that through sort of gaining extra credentials or even being mentored. So that's the other thing that I've also found in my journey. Yes, there were stumbling blocks around not being able to complete certain qualifications, but I pursued and I persisted. So, also understanding that it's not going to be a linear, smooth journey. So, what I have since applied and I continue to apply and pursue it is find a mentor, find a coach. Some of the programs that I did, they offered a coaching and mentoring element to that. But I, as an individual, have always said to myself, can I have a conversation with somebody who's done this role before, who can help me navigate this role or this industry or this organization? Can I go out and find a coach that either I can pay or can offer their support? From the love of supporting other people. A lot of people are actually quite willing to do that, and I found that. My journey has been quite fulfilling, and my journey has been quite robust in that I found myself in different industries and different roles. So earlier on, after high school, my first job was being a teller at a bank, one of the big banks in South Africa. That was a short term role, and I knew that and I understood that. So I studied part time while I worked. And as I did that, knowing that this journey is going to be short lived, I obviously pursued more secure work. And I found myself working in the aviation industry. And that journey was probably for a maximum, for a tenure of about 8 years. And I found myself doing different roles in operations as well as in compliance, and working with people and teams and making sure that certain contracts were being fulfilled. I completed my marketing qualification during that time while I was in aviation. I was lucky enough to get a role in marketing as an events coordinator for also one of the big FMCG companies in the world. And I absolutely loved that and I thrived. Um, I then moved into my chapter in Canada and I found myself in a sort of a new starting point where being in a new country, it's not that easy to kind of navigate the job market because you're new. Your network is quite limited. So I was very open to trying something that was a little different, but I was also very mindful of my skill set, having worked with people, having worked a little bit in marketing, and having worked a little bit in compliance. I took the time to kind of reflect on this is a new chapter, embracing that. Where do I want to see myself? That's when my L&D career, I suppose, was launched. I was working for a skills development nonprofit in Canada, and I absolutely loved it and fell in love with helping people become better versions of themselves through upskilling themselves through various skills and training programs. And that was also quite a short journey because I knew that it was, non-profit organization. It's quite limited in terms of how far you can move up and how quickly you can move up. I was very fortunate, very lucky, because at the time I had been enrolled in Toastmasters, which I'm also an advocate for. Toastmasters is a program that anybody can enroll in, and it helps with public speaking, communication, and leadership. Through that network, I was able to land a program coordinator role for a consulting firm that was in the training or corporate training space. And I worked as a coordinator for that firm and then quickly moved up into program manager. And again, we were supporting organizations into upskilling their teams through various coaching programs and various learning and development programs. When I moved back to South Africa, I think at that time I was quite clear on where my passion lies. And I was quite clear about this new career that was forming and forging itself and kind of unfolding slowly. I then found myself in a wellness organization, and I continued in the L&D career path where I was a performance and learning consultant, where I consulted on L&D initiatives and programs that were a lot more specific this time around because it was focused on employee wellness. I then moved into another role as a training specialist, again, still in L&D, still helping organizations upskill their teams through various training and development initiatives. And unfortunately, with that role and because of the pandemic that hit the globe in 2020, I was retrenched, and I continued then focusing on my MBA because at that time I was in my second year as an MBA part-time student. And then during that time, embracing what was happening in my life, focused on my studies, and again, being clear on my L&D career path. I was fortunate this year to bounce back and land myself as the learning solutions consultant for iLearn here in South Africa. I think when I reflect back on my profession and my career is that it wasn't linear. It wasn't the natural progression where people start in an organization, an entry level position, they move up, or even staying in the same industry. I've been very lucky that I've had the opportunity to work in FMCG, in the wellness space, in the consulting space. I'm very fortunate that that's happened the way it's happened because it really gives me a holistic perspective of the different industries. And I think it really enhances my conversations with clients and my partners and my associates and my network because I've actually been exposed to the different industries. And other reflections on my career path, I would say, is being open and being able to embrace your circumstances and being able to reflect back and say, I find myself in a new country, in my case. Where am I? What skill sets do I have? What strengths do I have? And how can I use that to move myself forward? And how you move yourself forward is obviously asking yourself, where do you want to be? And then aligning those things that you have. So asking the questions around, is there a certain role that I aspire to occupy, or is there a certain industry that I aspire to work in, a certain company, and then you obviously do the things that you need to do in order to move into the different spaces. This is a very, very big question. One of the things that I found in my profession is that we don't talk enough about the capacity for people to learn, or the capacity for people to do what they do and do well. Capacity is quite broad in a sense that if I ask a Stanley, do you have capacity to do a role? Immediately we go to the technical aspect of, do you have the resources? Do you have the time? But what's coming up more and more often for me is the mental well-being factor. Do people have capacity mentally to still do well in their roles, in their tasks, and their projects? So this is really why I'm passionate about mental health and mental well-being, is that there is absolutely a lot that is going on currently. We are going through a pandemic. We've never been through a pandemic before. So the landscape for learning, for businesses, for professions, for communities is looking a little different. And we are being affected mentally, emotionally, financially, because of everything that's happening and the dynamics that are currently happening in the world. So we don't often talk about how are we then coping and how are we navigating this foreign territory. So this is a bit of a roundabout way of answering your question, but my interest and my career, I see it still being in learning and development. That is the ultimate pursuit, to continue contributing in the learning and development space. But I see an infusion of mental health and well-being, workplace well-being coming into that, and creating those conversations with the powers that be. And when I say the powers that be, I mean business leaders. I'm hoping to drive more conversations with business leaders around how they are creating workplaces that are conducive to the well-being of the organizations, because there is no business without a people. People are at the focal, they're at the center of every business and service that there is out there. So I'm going to continue working in learning and development, but I would like to participate in organizations that put well-being and workplace well-being at the forefront of their people, and they put that, or not put that, but they integrate that in how they run their organizations. As a leader in my own right, in my own capacity, I would like to participate actively in driving conversations around looking at people from a mental health, mental well-being perspective. So I will continue with my volunteer work. I will continue with my advocacy, and I do plan to formalize that in various social media platforms to kind of drive and continue that conversation. My mother has been quite inspirational in how she's navigated life challenges. So I draw a lot of strength from my mom's tenacity for life and to live authentically. I have to also mention my sister, who's an academic by profession, and she's really questioned, or not questioned, but she keeps me curious about creating or expanding my intellectual capacity. I have been lucky to be professionally coached by, I'm going to mention Tammy Nielsen, she's now late, but her interaction, or my interaction with her, was quite impactful. Um, there's authors that I want to mention, like Dr. Brené Brown, that have influenced how I lead my life and how I choose to live my life authentically as a professional and as an individual. But I think there's a few other coaches that are indirect, just through the mainstream social media stuff and just through the reading that I do, the books that I read. I think my vision for Africans is to continue interrogating our belief systems. I believe that we find ourselves often accepting things because they are, and we don't necessarily ask why they are. And then when you ask why things are the way they are, you then allow yourself to explore alternatives. And I'll bring it back to learning and development and my profession. I will not accept that this is the limit of my career. And in not accepting that, I then ask myself why. And when I get my why, how do I move forward? I think there is room for us to really stretch our horizons by starting with our own mindset, by starting with our own internal reflections of why we believe certain things, why we do things a certain way, and why we don't do it differently. I think, as a starting point, individuals need to really look at their own mindsets and their own beliefs and their own circumstances, and where they are, and ask themselves, how do I get there? And not to be afraid to actually fall and stumble in the process and move that a little bit quicker, but just remaining curious and asking ourselves why, and making, because again, once you know why, you then can start unpacking those answers and getting to those solutions.